So I've mentioned this is the seventh and final call for the EUCF funding. So what is the EUCF funding and what is its purpose? So, as we all know, and again, this particular funding call, and I know that everybody on the phone call is either linked to or related to a local authority, so you're well aware of the public sector targets that we have to 2030. So why do we need this particular funding call? It is estimated that across Europe, 3,000 billion euro is needed for the public sector, just the public sector, to meet its 2030 targets. Okay, so that's across Europe. I don't have a breakdown of the exact estimate for Ireland, but that is a large sum of money. Okay, and it's also estimated by the EU that only 10 to 15% is going to come from public funding that you have, or that the national funding that is made available to you as public sector and local authorities. Okay, so where is the rest of the money coming from? So the public finances cannot afford to fund the entire investment needs. Okay, so we need to get the remaining 85 to 90% from private funding sources. So there's a need to attract and trigger the private finance and to bridge that gap. Okay, so we need that investment to help us to deliver the projects that we need as a public sector to meet our 2030 targets. So why are there such barriers? Okay, and there's a number of barriers here, and again, I won't go through them all in detail. The slides and the recording will be presented afterwards. But basically, we have, and again, in local authorities, we've got very, in general, very, well capable and technical people for what we will say is the short term or the annual budgeting and the annual projects that we all do. We all do that on an annual basis, and we have a lot of experience and a lot of ability to do that. When we're talking about such vast sums of money and much larger scale projects, we need to be able to speak that financial language, okay, because we're looking to attract the private financing from much larger financing institutes. So this particular funding stream is going to help us solve that or break down that barrier between what we do now currently on a daily and annual basis, and help break down those barriers at a local level in order for us to attract that investment, speak the language of the investment institutes, and close that gap. So again, from an EUCF point of view, so this is the EUCF funding stream, and it is a funding stream. So again, just to reiterate for those of you who are new to this particular program or new to this call, the EUCF, this funding stream, is funding towards or for the investment concept. This is not a funding stream for capital projects or for CapEx for delivering your projects. This is a specific funding stream to develop the investment concept. Okay, and I'll talk a little bit about what the investment concept is in a few slides' time, but just to reiterate and to confirm with everybody, this is not funding towards capital projects. This is specifically to develop the investment concept, which is the piece that we are in general missing, so to speak, to help speak that language that I was talking about, that investment, that finance language, and bridge the gap between what we're doing here in terms of our planning, our climate action plans. Again, local authorities have all in the last 6 to 9 months developed and published your local authority climate action plan. So we have this climate energy action plan, and now we need to go and get that real investment, that large scale 80%, 85% funding from private finance. And this is the investment concept, which is going to bridge that gap between you as local authorities and where the money is coming from. Okay, so that is exactly or specifically what this particular funding is for. There's 60,000 euro of funding that is available, okay, and I'll go into that in a bit more detail. Okay, so just the important dates here. The 7th call for the applications is open from the 15th of October, okay, so from next week. Today's the 8th of October, and we're kicking off a week early just to make sure that you, as the Irish applicants, can have as much time as possible. So the 7th call is going to be officially open next week, 15th of October. And as I said, the deadline for applications is the 18th of December. It's 5 o'clock Central European time. Okay, so please again note this is 5 p.m. Central European time, which is 4 p.m. Irish time. Okay, so very important to note the deadline. If you're aiming for 5 o'clock Irish time, then you're going to miss the call. Okay, so really important point there. The 7th call is open only for new beneficiaries. Okay, so again, this is no different to the previous 6 calls. If you have previously been successful and received €60,000 towards an investment concept within your local authority or within your public sector body, you cannot apply again. Okay, so the 7th call is only for new beneficiaries. The €60,000 funding goes towards the, as I mentioned, the development of the investment concept, okay, or the IC, as you'll hear it referred to, or investment concept. So it's the key. The key is the financial support here. The €60,000 is specifically to get that IC developed. So as I mentioned before, it's not for capital projects, it's to get this investment concept developed. So it's going to give you the supports and the templates and the funding, €60,000 towards developing that IC. It also, again, and we'll go into it in a bit more detail, also, if needed, can help provide some technical supports as well in terms of making that investment concept realistic and achievable, again, to attract that finance in, that private finance. So we need to make sure that also the project is technically viable. Okay, so if needed as well, the funding can be used towards some technical supports. In the 7th call, these are the funding, excuse me, this is the amount of funding that is available. So there's €4.26 million available in the 7th call. You'll see I've noted, I've marked out here the middle section. So Ireland is part of the Nordic countries in Western Europe. So there's a group of 11 countries there. Okay, we have a funding pot of 1.08 million, which means that there are going to be 18 investment concepts that will be financed in this 7th call. Okay, you'll see the group of excuse me, of countries there. But basically, we have funding available for 18 investment concepts across that group of 11. It does not need to be, and it has not been in the past, evenly spread out. If for example, Denmark and Finland submit 18 of the best applications, then all of the money will go to those 2 countries. So it's spread. It doesn't need to be spread evenly. It's taken as a group of countries. All of the applications are evaluated, and the top 18 scores out of that group will be awarded funding. I'll go into a bit more detail about the applications or the evaluation later on. Just on the previous 6 calls, so just to update, so you'll see here, these are all of the countries that have submitted in the last 6 calls. As I said, this is the 7th, so there have been 6 previous calls over the last 3 years. So over the last 3 years, Ireland has had 17 applications, 5 of which have been successful. Excuse me. There's 1 completed investment concept, so that was submitted last year, and they're also currently in the monitoring stage of the process. So there has been 1 IC completed. There's 1 currently underway, and there are 2 that have just started. There were 2 successful in the last call, 6th call, which was the deadline was back in June of this year. So at the 6th call, we had 2 successful applications, so they are just starting. So you'll see that's 4 that have been successful and are underway. 1 was successful in getting the funding, but did not complete the IC, so it was not completed. But you can see there, as I said, it does not need to be spread evenly. The funding does not need to be spread evenly. It's up to each country to work on its applications, to submit applications, and then they are all evaluated. And as I said, for our particular area, the top 18, and if they are all from 1 country or if they're all from spread evenly, it doesn't matter. They will take the top 18 scores of the applications. So the benefits. What is the IC EUCF funding, and what are the benefits of it? So basically, the benefit is it's financial support. So there is a €60,000 amount of grant funding that is available. And the beauty of this funding is, because it's certainly different to some other funding that we can go for here in Ireland, this funding can be used for both in-house staff costs and consultancy fees. Okay, so it's €60,000, 75% of which is paid upfront at the start once you have signed the grant agreement, and the rest on completion of the IC. So it's paid in a lump sum, two lump sums, one at the start, one at the end, and it can be used for whatever you need to use it for in order for you to develop your IC. So whether that's in-house consultancy or anything else that you need. What is the investment concept? Okay. So as I've mentioned already, the purpose of it is to provide that gap. It's to fill that gap between, I'm going to say, our technical jargon. This is our energy efficiency. This is our renewable projects. This is our climate action plan. This is where we are. This is where we need to be by 2030. And we've got our, as I'm sure you have, your pipeline of projects. Now we need to go and find the money, and we need to be able to talk that financial language. So this investment concept takes our plans and puts it into the right format and the right jargon, the right speak for those private investment institutes. The investment concept is a pre-feasibility study in a way that includes identification of the potential project pipeline, the market barriers, local stakeholder analysis, legal analysis, governance analysis, and the basic financing strategy that you think and the roadmap for implementation. Okay, so it's basically, as I said, a pre-feasibility study that's going to say, right, as I said, this is where we are, this is where we need to be, this is our climate action plan, we've got our pipeline of projects, how are we going to get there? There's a few barriers along the way, these are the stakeholders we're going to have to engage with, etc. And it's, as I said, going to outline all of that so that the private investors know that you know what the risks are, and they therefore know what the risks are. So to transform, as it says there on the slide, the local climate and energy plans into sound investment packages, and thus facilitate the access to funding for the local authorities. Okay. Examples of the EU funding instruments that we're talking about. So what money are we talking about? So there's obviously different financing streams, but some of the examples of the EU funded instruments: the European Fund for Strategic Investments, or the EFSI, the European Structural Investment Funds, and various project development assistance, or PDA facilities. Okay, so such as ELENA. Some of you will have heard of ELENA. Some of you will have worked on ELENA projects. For those of you who are working on public lighting projects, for example, RMO project to deliver public lighting across Ireland is and was funded by the ELENA facility from the European Investment Bank. So there's lots of large investment institutes or finance institutes across Europe that this investment concept will help attract money from. From investment concept to investment. So as I said, this particular funding and the benefits of it, not only is it a lump sum of €60,000, but also that there are learnings and supports available from the EUCF team. Okay, so there's financial models, there's investment schemes, there's templates, report templates, finance cash flow templates, etc., that will all become available to you if you are successful. Okay, so it's not just the €60,000, but there is a lot of supports in terms of models and schemes and templates, etc., that will become available to you. There's a community of practice, so you'll get, there's also, as I mentioned, financial analysis tool and also training. So there will be training for you throughout the process. Once, if you are successful and once you're issued and signed a grant agreement, there is a 12-month period to develop the IC, or the investment concept. And within that 12 months, there is all of the support and training that is available to you from the European City Facility to help you make sure that we get a good and clear investment concept at the end of the 12 months. So talking about the support, here is the support system. So there is the EUCF team and the central help desk. So they're based in Brussels, and they are the central team who are there. When you go to the help desk, it will be somebody from Brussels who either responds or they will pass your specific query directly onto what we call either the country expert and or the national hub. So each country in those group of 11 in our section that I told you before has its own country expert and a national hub. So that is where all of the information can be available and the direct local support can be gotten from. Check who are the country experts and national hubs for your country here. There is a link, but I will tell you that is us and that is what we're here telling you today. So the Southeast Energy Agency is the national hub, and the country expert is myself, Alex Hamilton. There's an email address there. So again, for the general email, again, if you want to contact people from other countries, it's the general ce.country. And obviously for this particular example, we're here in Ireland. So the email address is ce.ireland@eucityfacility.eu. So any queries, etc., on this particular funding stream must be emailed to that email address, ce.ireland@eucityfacility.eu, and that is passed on to both myself as the country expert and Ailish representing the national hub. Our role here at the National Help Desk and as a country expert is to give you the guidance, okay, and give you the information on how to submit the application, what needs to go into the application, okay. Today is a general kickoff meeting, so we won't be going into anything in too much detail. This is general information. I've highlighted there in yellow tailored training. So again, previous calls in the last call, we had a specific training session on the application. So we went through it kind of stage by stage because there's a 4-stage. I will touch on it later. So again, the option is to you after today's webinar. If there's for those of you who have worked on EUCF funding before, if you have submitted an application previously and it's been unsuccessful, you will have received, or you certainly should have received, very good evaluation feedback on your application. Okay. For those of you who haven't submitted before and want further information or advice, or for those of you who are brand new to EUCF, following today's webinar, which as I said is a general information webinar, you will be asked for feedback, and if there is any specific key element or specific topic that you want us to cover, we are here over the next 2 months until that deadline of the 18th of December to help you as Irish applicants get a successful application in. Okay, and we can develop tailored training. So as I said, we did do one previously, going through step by step the application process. So or any other topic, let us know in the feedbacks. But that is our job, is to provide. Today is the national information session, so that's the general information session. But we are here to help you. As I said, very important to get a successful, or to get some applications in. Okay, if we're not in it as a national group of local authorities, then we can't win it, as they say. And so our aim here is to help get as many Irish applications into this fund as possible. As I said, this is the last call. We would certainly hope that there will be future calls, but there's going to be a break now of we would estimate at least 18 months, perhaps 2 years, until more funding is available. So as it stands, from this particular pot of funding, this is the 7th and last call. So who's eligible? Who can apply? Okay, so eligibility checks. There are 5 questions here. And if you can answer yes to all 5 of these questions, then you are eligible to apply. Okay. I've been through these in a lot of detail previously, so I will just touch on them. There is very, very good guidelines again on the EUCF website. So if I don't cover anything in detail here, absolutely please come back to us using that email address that I just gave you. We are here to help and support you. But on the EUCF facility website, there are very, very detailed and good guidelines that again will take you through all of the eligibility, all of the application process, and all of the evaluation process. As I said, today is a general information session. So eligibility check. Are you a local authority, okay, or a group of local authorities? Or are you a local public entity that is linked to a local authority? Okay, so for this particular funding, you need to be linked to a local authority. Is your municipality or local authority a member of the EU 27 member states? So yes is the answer for us here in Ireland. Does your municipality or local authority, and again, just to reiterate for those of you who are new to EU applications or EU funding, there's a lot of EU speak. So obviously here we are local authorities, and other across Europe, a lot of talk about municipalities. So local authorities, do you have a sustainable energy and climate action plan or other local climate and energy plan with mitigation targets? Okay. And again, for all of the local authorities in Ireland, we can now answer yes, because you have all just developed and submitted your local authority climate action plan. So those local authority climate action plans, which are now developed, fall into this category and are acceptable for this funding stream. So you can now all as local authorities answer yes to this question. Will you be able to provide proof of political commitment? So again, in the application process, there is a template letter, and it has to be signed by a political leader. Either in general, it will be your tailor-made or similar political local political representative to say, yes, we have backup and support from the political establishment, let's say. Again, in general, mayors in Ireland are different to mayors across Europe, but in general, it would be the mayor or tailor-made or other relevant political representative. Do you commit to the EUCF monitoring period for 2 years? So again, that's a tick box at the end of the application that after you have developed and submitted your investment concept, if you're successful with in accessing the funding, that for 2-year period after you submit, that the EUCF will come back and perform a survey, monitor how you are going. Are you actually implementing anything that you have developed from the IC? So again, it's a tick box. Do you commit to a monitoring period? So five very simple questions, and 5 questions that I would certainly think that everybody on this phone call and every local authority in Ireland can answer yes to, which makes you all eligible. You can apply as a group of local authorities or a group of stakeholders, okay, as long as a local authority is leading. Okay, so again, if you can answer the yes to the 5 questions, again, I know when we've had it in the past, for example, some 3rd level institutes working with the local authorities. So the local authority will lead the applicant and apply for the funding and receive the funding, and they are working with, for example, local 3rd level institutes for the research and development of their ICs, etc. So that kind of thing. Or you can group local authorities. So again, similar to, again, some of you will be aware of the SEAI's Pathfinder funding. So bringing groups of local authorities together, and again, that is allowed as long as there is one lead applicant. However, just to reiterate, that it's €60,000 per application. So if you have a group of, for example, 4 or 5 local authorities in a Pathfinder region going for this funding, then it's €60,000 per application. It's not €60,000 per local authority, okay? But it is very similar in a sense to the Pathfinder. It allows you to aggregate smaller investment projects over a larger region, perhaps. So some local authorities, regions, or some of your local action plans may include lots of smaller projects, and this particular way will allow you to aggregate some smaller projects and therefore make it more attractive, let's say, for the investors. Again, we're trying to attract private finance. What's going to make that attractive to the private finance? 1 or 2 small projects, no, but if we aggregate a lot of smaller projects across a group or a region, very similar to the Pathfinder program, then that is much more attractive for a private financing institute. Again, I've mentioned that already. So the relationship must include a local authority, and if the application is successful, it's €60,000 for the group. So it's not €60,000 each. I mentioned that already. Again, I'm not going to go into detail here because we know that the answer to yes. So who qualifies as a local public authority? You or public entity. So you as local authorities in Ireland are recognised as a tier of local government. You are composed of local authorities and you have specific political and administrative structure. So that's a yes there. I'm not going to dwell on this. So you are eligible as local authorities. So that's the 5 questions there to the eligibility check, so to speak. So if you can answer yes to all 5, which knowing a lot of the local authorities here should be simple enough to do. That's a yes for all those 5, means that you are eligible to apply for this funding. Now the application process. So step number 1, there's 3 steps here to the application process to getting that €60,000 funding. Eligibility check, and we've just gone through those yes or no answers to those 5 requirements, okay? And when you log into the application process, it's a tick, 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 yes, yes, yes. If you answer no to any of those questions, you're not eligible and you cannot go any further, okay? So it's a simple automatic check. Then we go on to the EUCF application. Again, I'm not going to go into detail. I will talk briefly about it. If that is something that people want, we can have a separate webinar where we go through it in much more detail. But this is the step 2 that we're talking about today, deadline of which is the 18th of December. And it's completing the actual application form and submitting the required documents. I'll go through that in detail. There are 4 areas or criteria that you will be answering questions or completing the application based on these 4, which I will talk about, and the evaluation and scoring is based on the 4. And again, I will go into detail about that because it's quite specific, and again, the guidelines are very, very detailed, so it helps you at every step of the way to make sure that you're answering the correct questions with the correct information to maximize your scoring. For those of you who are successful, you move on to what we call the grant agreement process, and that's usually a two-month process where you are then given the contract basically, or the grant agreement, and it's signed between both parties. And once that is signed, the date, or your 12 months, starts from the date your grant agreement is signed. I mentioned the four areas for the application form. So there's identification of the applicant. Again, I'm going to go in a bit more detail on the next slide. Political commitment, which I've mentioned already. Proposed investment project. So this is the crux of it. This is what is your project. And then how are you going to use the support? So how are you going to use the €60,000 and the other supports that are available from EUCF? So it just asks you to outline. So those are the 4 areas. There are 2, again, very important supporting documents. If you do not submit, you cannot be evaluated. You're not complete application, you cannot be evaluated. You have to submit your local authority or local climate and energy plan. Okay, so again, you all have these now. They've all been published since February of this year. So you all have, and you must submit that. So you must have a PDF version that you can submit on the application portal. And again, I mentioned that political commitment. I mentioned there is a template that is available. So again, there is a letter of support to the development of the investment concept that must be signed by your, for example, Heerloch or Mayor or other political representatives. So that 2.2 political commitment is linked to this. It has to be signed on headed paper, etc. So those are the 2 documents that you must submit at application stage. So these are the 4 areas, and again, just briefly, identification of the application, very straightforward. Your name, your address, and then details of your county. So, for example, the population size of the municipality that you as a local authority are over, organisation, department, email, etc. Your LAU and your NUTS 3 code are numbers for those of you who don't know. Again, come to us at the help desk to ask us. But those are Eurostat numbers. Local authority codes and NUTS 3 code are European codes that are allocated. So if you don't know where to find them, please do come. Again, in the guidance on the EUCF facility, there are details on how to find them, but if you don't know those, please do come to us. The political commitment, again, we've mentioned the 2 documents already. You have to upload your CCAP and you have to upload the letter of political support, and there is an EUCF. Okay, so again, it's general information. Your plan or your local authority plan outlines what was your baseline, where do you need to be by 2030, and these are the mitigating projects that are outlined or that we are aiming to, or you as local authorities are aiming to. So that is what your plan does. And you have to upload that and put some general information about your plan and which specific target you are targeting within this particular funding stream. So the investment concept it may look at the whole or how to deliver the whole action plan, or it may take a piece of the action plan, for example, transport or public lighting, which has already been done, so probably not buildings, how to upgrade your buildings, etc. So it will highlight which particular target within your local authority climate action plan are you targeting with this investment concept, okay? Now we're going to talk about the proposed investment project, okay? And again, there's a list of details here. So what is the title? What is the description and objective? So what is it you're trying to do here? What is the implementation period? How long is that project going to take to implement? The main investment sector that's targeted, governance structure for the IC development. So governance structure is, and again, in the evaluation criteria, very, very detailed breakdown of what is required here. So each of these steps here has marks allocated to it, okay, and depending on your answers, that's how you'll be evaluated. Again, within the full EUCF guidelines, there is very, very detailed guidance on each of these steps, very detailed, that I don't have time to go through today. Again, if needed and wanted, we will put on a separate one where we will literally go through each of these areas. And finally, the section 4 is the use of the EUCF support. So again, it just asks you very simply, what are the activities? What is it that you're going to do, or how is it you're going to pay for it? Okay, what are you going to do with the money? Are you using it for in-house staff costs, or are you using a subcontract, a subconsultant, or a mixture of both, or you know, what is it you're going to do? So again, just generally the activities, what are you going to be doing with the money? And the last question here is the preparation of the EUCF application. So again, it just asks you, have you completed the application yourself, or again, have you received external expertise and help? So what to consider for the EUCF application, okay? So again, some points to assist based on the previous applications, okay? So there, as I said, this is the 7th call, so there have been 6 previous calls. And some of the main points that have come up in the last 5 or 6 calls that were coming up consistently on unsuccessful applications. So just just to highlight key points to look out for. You must target at least one mitigation target. You must mention or talk about at least one mitigation target from your local authority climate action plan. Okay, if you submit your local authority climate action plan and then you submit an application form that has 0 mention or relationship to the local authority climate action plan, then it will not be funded. Okay, so you have these plans to get to 2030, and the point of this funding stream is to help you reach those targets by identifying and by implementing the actions outlined in the plan. So if you go for funding and don't actually mention your plan, then you're not going to be funded. Expected investment and impacts must be summarized per sector in a table. Okay, this will make much more sense again when you go into the application process. Okay, and again, it was previously found that they either didn't relate to the local authority climate action plan, or they weren't in the right sectors, for example. Okay, so again, this will make more sense when you're in the application form. Okay, the total investment size and total impacts, they're automatically calculated. Once you put in the expected investments and impact size, the total across the whole project is automatically calculated, okay? There are very clear examples provided in the guidelines for application, okay? And again, today's general information session, I don't have time to go through this, but there are very detailed examples. The projects must be focused on energy efficiency, okay? Or must have some element of energy efficiency is what I'm going to say here. Projects that are only looking at renewable energy will not be scored as highly. Okay, so at least energy efficiency must be at least mentioned and at least targeted in some format. If we're just looking at, for example, I don't know, a rooftop PV project with absolutely no energy efficiency projects related to that, then it will score lower, okay? You have to have a good description of governance structure and stakeholder engagement strategy. So these are key pieces to an investment concept. How is when you get that large amount of funding from private finance, private institutes, how is it going to be governed? What is the governance structure? And also, how are you going to engage with stakeholders? Okay, so there are two very clear elements. Again, within the guidelines, there are very clear guidance on what it's looking for. Again, if you need any assistance, we are here to assist you. Incoherent and unrealistic figures. Okay, so for example, I'm going to change 4 EVs or four my HGVs into EVs, and I'm going to save 2,000 megatons of CO2. Oh, I've just made up some figures there, but it's completely unrealistic. Okay, that's not incoherent. It's not realistic. Okay, and you will not score. So evaluation criteria 4, which I'm going to come on to, is all about coherence and plausibility. Don't make up figures. There has to be it has to make sense, and again, it has to be linked to that CCAP. Applications must be unique and tailored to the local context. Okay, so applications with duplicates or similar content within a region cannot be considered. So again, we're here to help you. We are working with you as a group of local authorities. If you are submitting an application, please do come and talk to us, because we can look and see who else is planning to submit a similar or an application, and make sure that we're not having 2 applications submitted from Ireland for exactly the same topic, because they will not be funded. Okay, so we're here again to coordinate that. Again, mention beneficiaries from previous calls. So if you have been, and it's beneficiary, so it's not if you have submitted an application and not been successful, that is okay, you can reapply. But these are beneficiaries, so those who have already been successful cannot apply again. Mandatory documents I've mentioned already, so I'll skip past this one. It's the CCAP, or the Sustainable Energy Action Plan, or in your case, is the local authority climate action plans, and the letter of support. Again, there is a template there. The evaluation process. Okay, so closing call, the closing deadline. Again, I will mention it's the 18th of December 2024, and there's going to be a 2-month evaluation process. Okay, successful applicants will be, all applicants, successful and unsuccessful, will be notified by email. Okay, if you are successful, you will be invited to complete the GA, which is the grant agreement. Okay, and unsuccessful applicants receive feedback. Okay, so again, I reiterate, for those of you who have submitted in the past and been unsuccessful, please log into your portal, log in and look at the feedback report. There will be very detailed feedback and score of each section, and it will help you to excuse me, to reevaluate if you want to resubmit again. We did, and I will say, because I know we had 4 or 5 unsuccessful applications. We had 2 successful, but we had 4 or 5 unsuccessful applications, and some of them were very, very close. They were very, very close in scoring. So I will say, and I have already contacted those people, but I will reiterate that please do look at your reports and look at the feedback that you've been given if you want to submit again. There are 20 total points, okay? So the evaluation or the score you will be given is a mark out of 20. Okay, and again, each of the 4 elements that we've gone through there already, the ambition or about the project, okay, is 7 points. The ambition or the size of the project. The governance structure, okay, is given 5 points. Stakeholder engagement strategy. So there's another 5 points. So I mentioned earlier, there's 50% of the points, 10 points are going for your governance structure and your stakeholder engagement. So do not underestimate how important these are. They're 50% of your marks, okay? And then I mentioned already the coherence and plausibility. How realistic, how feasible are the numbers that you're talking about? Again, there's 3 points available there. Specific questions needs to be answered. Okay, so again, just to reiterate again, the evaluators are external. Okay, so they're not the national hubs or us as country experts. We are not part of the evaluation process. We're completely removed from that. So they are independent external evaluators. Okay, and they go through each of the process. So specific questions must be answered. So in the application process, and again, look at the guidelines, there's very, very detailed information as to what they're looking for. Okay, spell it out for them. It's very clear what, sorry, let me go back to this slide here. It's very clear what we're getting marks for. There's 7 marks here for talking about these 7 areas. Okay, so make sure you are addressing each of these areas, similar with each of them. Okay, so it's very, very detailed. Make sure that you're answering the questions. There is a minimum quality threshold of 50%. Okay, this applies to criteria 2 to 4. There used to be a 50%, so ambition or the size of the project, 7 points. If you didn't score 3.5, you were eliminated. That, unfortunately, in previous calls, saw a lot of the smaller local authorities, smaller regions across Europe who weren't as big and didn't have as, they're calling it ambition. They're still very ambitious, but in terms of figures, are smaller than larger municipalities. They have removed that. So it is still out of 7 points, but you do not have to score 50% to move on. You do, however, have to score 50% as a minimum in the other 3 sections, okay, or you are ineligible. Okay, hope that makes sense. And just to say, it doesn't mean that criteria 1 isn't important. It is important, but as I said, it just means that smaller regions, smaller municipalities now are on a more level playing field, let's say. So just to reiterate then, the whole entire journey, we've got the pre-application stage, that is us right now, between now and, well, really next week, but we've got pre-application stage. We've got EUCF website, okay, really, really great guidance, very, very clear, very detailed guidance for the application and the evaluation process. EU events such as this one and national information sessions. And as I said, we're very, very happy to help and support you throughout this process. So if you need any support, if there's a specific topic that you want covered, please come back to us. Give us that feedback. The application process, I went through eligibility check and then completing the full application online. The deadline is the 18th of December, 4 o'clock Irish time, 5 o'clock Central European time, 4 o'clock Irish time. Successful applications will go on to the grant agreement, and unsuccessful applications will go and you will receive good feedback on what happened on your score. The grant agreement then, if you are successful, you will prepare and sign the EUCF grant agreement. Okay, sorry, it wasn't 75, it's 65. Apologies, I said 75 earlier. You will then receive within 2 weeks, and again, we've seen that we've had 2 of our beneficiaries receive their 65% lump sum in the last couple of weeks. They've just signed the grant agreement at the end of August. So 65% lump sum payment is made at the start as soon as you've signed the grant agreement. You then have a 12-month period to develop the IC, or the investment concept. Okay, I've mentioned already, it's not just the €60,000 you will receive. There is technical support, capacity building, and standardized tools and documents and models. Okay, once you submit and complete the investment concept, then there's the 2-year monitoring period. Okay, where the EUCF will monitor you for a 2-year period just to see how are you getting on. Are you making any progress, or are you not making any progress? And sorry, just to reiterate, on completion of the investment concept, once you submit it and it's accepted by the EUCF, you will then get the final 35% payment period, 35% payment in a lump sum. So that is a summary of the whole EUCF journey. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I hope, where are you? I've lost you. Sorry, I'm working between 2 screens here. Perfect. So just before we finish as well, we also have Erico from Babel on the line, and just for the last 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll go into questions after that. So Erico is from Babel, and Babel are here to talk to us about tips and tricks. They've been very, very successful in applying for this particular fund with various people, so they know the tips and tricks for a successful application. So I'm going to hand you to Erico, and then we will come back for questions. Thanks, Erico.
Thank you very much, Alex. I hope you can hear me well, and the screen is sharing. So yeah, thank you very much, Alex, for the brief. And indeed, it's a very interesting fund, which can open a lot of doors to unlock some capital investment from the European Union, but also locally, nationally. A lot of budgets are going into these topics in Ireland. So, a business case makes things easier and accelerate to grab those investments and those budgets. It's a quick introduction about myself. My name is Erico. As Alex mentioned, I work with Bubble, where we support local authorities to accelerate the climate action goals. A huge part of that is, of course, bringing finance opportunities and assisting them to finance climate projects. We have been part of this EUCF journey since the very first rounds by supporting local authorities to write the application, but also delivering the investment concepts of them. So throughout all these years that the UCF has been going in, we have grasped a very good understanding of what makes a successful application. And this is what quickly I'm going to cover in the next few minutes. I have slides with some of the local authorities that we have been successful so far with UCF, both in delivering their investment concept, but also actually putting together the proposal for those. As you can see, there is 3 Irish local authorities into these slides. On the previous call, round 6, we helped Sligo County Council and also Galway City Council with their applications. I saw a question also on the chat regarding the topics that the Irish local authorities have been successful with, so I can cover the 3 out of 5. So in Sligo, we are actually looking, and what the application was about was the electrification of fleet. So what Sligo aims to do is an investment concept around how they can electrify their own public fleet and what type of infrastructure is needed to support that investment. In Galway City, they're looking to social housing, specifically the smart metering around those, and also solar PVs, renewable energy generation. And then in Fingal, it's actually one of the projects that's also coming to an end. It was successful in round 5, if I'm not mistaken, of UCF. Fingal looked into active travel measures through mobility hubs and how basically we can decrease emissions in the transport sector that they're working in. So that's a bit the topics that we have covered and work with the local authorities in the last EUCF calls. As you see, a lot of different local authorities, and I think this picture also presents quite well the graph that Alex showed, depending on where the country is and what is basically the demand of UCF. As you see, a lot of Portuguese and Spanish local authorities in this slide, as there's a lot of demand on the south of Europe regarding UCF. Some main key takeaways that we have identified during our work with putting together these proposals, but also delivering them, because it goes on both ends. We don't want to make a successful application and then have challenges and struggles in delivering what we propose to do. So I think it's important to balance those two. Something first very important is eligibility, right? We have to have a politically approved climate action plan, which of course it's something that has been checked in the last year by all Irish local authorities. Second is the proof of political commitment, and something that's very important is that we get this document as soon as possible. Because reaching the people in these positions it's very hard. They're very busy people. There have been cases, not from Ireland, but other countries which we supported to put together the proposal. That the proposal was ready, but we didn't have the signed political commitments because the person was basically quite busy and they ended up not submitting the application. So I think quite important to get that political commitment once it's decided to go forward with the UCF application as soon as possible. Second point, key takeaway from our experience in the past is the impacts. So it's important that, as Alex mentioned, to identify projects that have significant impact on the emissions reduction, especially from the efficiency side of things. But we also, from our experience, find it quite important to introduce also a clean energy generation elements into the discussion. So although efficiency remains key on UCF, it's always important to couple it and mix it together with the clean energy generation. And of course, it's important to be ambitious with the numbers, the investments, trying to be really looking forward and a bit more on the ambitious side, however, also quite realistic with the calculations. Of course, it makes sense how big the city is and what the investment is scaled to the city and that calculation there. So it's very important to be ambitious with the numbers, but also quite realistic with the calculations on how much emissions are being promised to be reduced and how much clean energy is being promised to be generated. Regarding the storyline, it's important to build on the existing initiatives and ambitions. So basing basically your arguments and the investment concept into the climate action plan is a very necessary step. One key suggestion and recommendation from my side here is to remain focused into one sector. From our past experience, we have seen cases where cities, in order to increase the numbers and just to make a better argument in terms of how many emissions are being saved and how much electricity being generated by renewable sources, they tend to couple a lot of different projects together into the investment concepts, which don't have much to do with each other. Let's say, for example, energy efficiency buildings together coupled with transport projects, which of course are very different and have very different kind of sector and thematic focus. Of course, it can make a successful application because the numbers will go up and it makes a good case for the EUCF to award this contract. However, then it gets quite tricky on the delivery as you're basically looking into two different projects because you're been coupling the small ones that don't have much, let's say, sense with each other. So I think it's important to keep in mind to focus only on one sector and yeah, couple projects, smaller projects from that one. Another key recommendation from our side actually is also to focus on the governance and stakeholders. As you saw on the evaluation points, number 3 is fully focused on the stakeholder engagement strategy. So it's important that in the application, but also on the delivery of the concept, once it's successful, is that you bring the right people on board and you ask the question and answer it also on the investment concept. How is society benefiting out of these investments? Is it energy bills that are going to be reduced? Mention these things that they are not much related with the numbers and the energy emissions that we're saving, but it's rather more societal, socioeconomic benefits that the investment will bring into the delivery of it. So that's also one of our recommendations to take a look a bit more closely on the governance and the stakeholders, who needs to be involved. Ideally, is it a university? Is it a local community group that is benefiting out of this investment? And just mentioning that in the application makes a very good case. Europe love this wording around society, so it's very important that we check some boxes there as well. And our final recommendation is start on time. Although there is a 2 months and the application is not a very time-consuming one, it's quite important that we're well ahead of time to kickstart things and yeah, just to have a draft as soon as possible. So then there's feedback and also there is a lot of stakeholders to take a look into the application before it's being sent over to the European, to the EUCF, to European City Facility. On the right, you'll see some of the values of points, which of course Alex covered. So main focus is the ambition of the proposed investment concept. Be ambitious, but at the same time realistic, because not being realistic will actually reduce points into that. Focus a lot on the governance structure for the investment concept. How we're engaging the stakeholders is also quite important, and also overall the coherence and plausibility of the proposal. So that's it. In case there's any questions that you may need, basically we're always happy to share our experience with such applications with you. So yeah, in case you need any questions, either over to Alex or over to me, we'd be happy to answer any of your questions. So that's it from our sides. Over to you again, Alex.
That's great. Thank you very much, Eriko. It's great to get those real tips from somebody who has worked on so many applications and so many successful applications. So well done, and thanks for passing on those tips to everybody. A couple of questions, and yeah, thanks, Eriko. You mentioned Dervla. You were looking for what the types of themes or the topics of the project. So yeah, Eriko mentioned a few there. There was another one that was district heating, and there was another one that was energy planning up in the northwest. So those are the types of topics. But again, come and talk to me, Dervla, anytime about more detail if you want. And the second question you have, and I think I answered that as well. So maybe what types of investment funds are likely to invest in the projects. So again, just to reiterate some of the examples, that we gave here. Sorry, let me find them. So the European Fund for Strategic Investments, the European Structural and Investment Funds, PGAs such as ELENA, and that comes through the European Investment Bank. So those are the type of large-scale financing institutes that we're looking at, or that this particular investment concept will help you access. If there's any other questions, we're just bang on time, but very happy to take any other questions, either unmute and ask a question or type into the chat there. If not, thank you very much for joining us. As I said, the slides and the recording will be sent around and made available by Ailish after today. Any queries or any assistance that you need, a reminder, the deadline is the 18th of December, 4 o'clock Irish time, and we are here to support you. So any questions or feedback, please do come back to us. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you as well, Alex. Have a good day. Bye bye, everyone.
Thanks, Erico.